What is up, my friends, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Calvin Reads the News, and Calvin reads the book, reads his own book. So we can do this, overcoming the political divide and creating the world we want to live in, applying spirituality and logic and reason to the world of politics. That's really what this is all about. But before I get into the next chapter, I want to share another article from the one of the top Danish newspapers, because I really want my European friends to understand that if you're getting your news from the newspapers, you are being misinformed and you are being weaponized. So I think a lot of people these days think that Trump is like this evil monster, tyrannical, whatever person, and you can think of him whatever you want. He's definitely a flawed person. But in my mind, the media is I was going to say the most evil, but the media is really, really evil, really sinister, evil, and destructive. Think about it. Think about how many people go around feeling in a state of terror, in a state of fear over Trump or Putin or climate change, or a few years ago, COVID. Where does that fear come from? That fear comes from what you've been told through the media. And when I ask Grok, how many Danes believe in the news they get from DR and TV2, here I'll share with you guys so you can see. Because of trust, but they've enjoyed high levels of trust. Around 60 to 7% of Danes express trust in news overall, with public broadcaster like DR and TV2 typically scoring higher than private outlets due to their reputation. Right. So the trust level, the level of trust in the news in Europe is way high, way high. And it's traumatizing people because it's telling them to be traumatized. And if you believe what you read, you would be scared. And it's also sowing division between Europe and the rest of the world for no good reason. Europe could and should be the closest ally of America, and Trump is, in my estimation, totally up for that. But not if you're going to be screwing America, which is what he's saying is happening. And I think a lot of Europeans don't get that there's a lot of stuff that's happening at the EU level in your name that you might not agree with, just like America has been fighting all these overseas wars. There's basically not been any time, period in recent memory where America has not been at war, murdering innocent people all across the globe, in Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria or Libya or Vietnam or Korea, whatever it is. The list is long and endless, and most Americans don't agree with that, and they might not even know it's happening because a lot of it is covert. And so in the same way, the Europeans don't know what their government is doing, but it might actually be the case that the government, especially the EU, which is so far removed from local people in each nation knowing what the hell is going on, that government is actually doing pretty nasty things that really piss off someone like Trump and the whole America First and MAGA movement for good reason. But Europeans don't know that. They just think they're the good guys. So I want to help just recalibrate this view and inspire a different way of looking at things. And one of the ways that I want to do that is through my book. And another way is just by looking and reading the articles in Danish media critically, assuming that it's probably going to be similar in other media across Europe. I don't know. And this is one of the big problems with living in Europe and having the EU, is that as a Dane, I don't have a clue what's happening, what the national conversation in Sweden is. I don't know what the national conversation in Germany or Romania or Turkey or Hungary or France. I don't know what that conversation is. So it's basically the EU is the perfect divide and conquer instrument. because all of these nations are inherently divided, and so linguistically too, right? Which is a big deal. And in terms of media and culture and everything, like these are separate countries. And so it's very easy to control and manipulate and do all these things under, like, outside of the purview and outside of the oversight of the press, which, as soon as I say that, I have to take that back, because the press is clearly not providing any oversight at all. It's just doing the bidding of the people that are in control. So anyway, so going to reading an article here. This is an article that was published this Sunday, so 2 days ago. It just stood out to me as like, whoa, so fascinating. So it goes like this. So this is Berlingske, which is, I think, the largest Danish newspaper by distribution. It's supposedly conservative, but it is not. And it is really, really, like, it's so skewed when it comes to America and Trump specifically. The other thing I want to say is, like, there's a lot of things that have happened between America and Europe. Like Europe has sanctioned and fined American companies a lot, and they're right now going aggressively after X for not doing the censorship. And there's a whole censorship industry where the problem that the American deep state has is that there's a First Amendment. There is actually in the Constitution is the right to free speech, which Europe doesn't have that. Europe doesn't have that. Like, it's not a thing in Europe. Like, we think we have free speech, but we don't. Free speech, as in free speech, is something different. And, like, for example, one of my clients is in Norway, and she can't talk about health outside of the official medical establishment. There's rules and laws against it where you can literally be put in jail, from what I hear. I'm not a lawyer and I haven't looked into this, but from what she's saying, she can be put in jail for just sharing her own journey of healing through food. Like, that's not fucking free speech. In America, there's free speech. You can say this shit. You can talk about your own journey. You can say that the medical establishment is a fucking criminal, corrupt cabal, and they can't put you in jail for that. But in Europe, they can. And so what the American deep state, and you've seen these articles in the New York Times that talks about, maybe it's time to revisit the First Amendment. Maybe it wasn't such a great idea. Like, literally in the New York Times. And so the deep state, the bureaucracy, whatever you want to call that, the blob, I call it in my book, they don't like free speech. And so one of the things they've done is they have gotten the EU to implement some of those free speech and censorship, or like anti-free speech and censorship laws that they can't do in America. And the EU digital, what is the DCA, the Digital Creations Act? I forget what it is, but that's a tool of, as I understand it, essentially American deep state tradecraft to get the EU to do that, so the EU can fine American companies and get them to do censorship that they can't get through America. So there's a whole thing that's happening here beneath the surface that you need to be aware of. And the media is not going to tell you this. The media is not going to tell you this stuff, right? Because, like, they're part of that whole blob system. So you really, like, it's unfortunate, but we live in a reality, in a world where right now you cannot trust the news that you get from official sources. And there is no source that you can trust for vetted news. There just isn't. I'm sorry, I wish there were, but it kind of turns out that there never was. Right? So it's not like it's new, it's just that now we have other options like X, which doesn't have the same level of censorship as other platforms. There's still some censorship and there's still shit going on, but it's not like Facebook, it's not like Berlingske or other mainstream media. So let me get back to this article here. Trump's fight against the courts is breaking all records. The result may very well be tyranny. No, this is a quote. You can always find someone to say some garbage shit in a quote, right? You can always find someone who's hating Trump and who's going to say, whoa, we're on the brink of tyranny. Like, that's easy. You can do that. And then you can put it in a headline, and then people are going to think that that's actually, even though there's quotes here, they're going to think that, oh shit, we might have tyranny. Oh, fuck. Right. And, like, it's breaking all records. What does that even mean? Who knows? But you can see how we're being primed here to be scared and think that Trump is out of control, right? That's the narrative. Always, whenever they talk about Trump, it's always this guy's out of fucking control. He's the threat to everybody, and we gotta get him. Like, we gotta get him under control. Like, we gotta do something to rein this guy in. That's always the narrative. It's a well-known fact that Trump is no great friend of the American justice system. Or you might say that the American justice system is not a great friend of Trump. Like, it's been literally weaponized against him. Like, we kind of know that. Did you know that it is now a indisputable fact that President Nixon was ousted by people in his own administration and by the deep state? Like, he was completely innocent in Watergate, and he was ousted because they didn't want him as president because they couldn't control him. And his vice president, Gerald Ford, was forced on him, quote unquote, but like, he was very much coerced onto Nixon so that they had a guy. So once they ousted Nixon, they had their guy in, right? Same as JFK. Like, Lyndon B. Johnson, we kind of know that now, was one of the chief architects behind the murder of JFK so that he could then become the president, which is why it's very important that Donald Trump picked someone as his VP that the deep state doesn't want, because otherwise it used to be too easy for them to just murder him and then they get their guy, right? This is how the system works. I just want you to realize that this is the reality of how the system actually works. It's not a particularly new thing. It's never been perfect, right? But if you're just living in fairy tale land where you just believe what you hear in the news and what's on the surface, you have no clue what's going on. And let me say this again, you are being weaponized. So the world that we're in right now is that ordinary citizens are being weaponized through the media. The media is what weaponizes you to then hate other people, like Americans or Trump or MAGA people or your neighbor or your friend or whatever. You're being programmed in your mind to hate other people and to fight them. Look at what happened during COVID, right? People were being weaponized to hate people who didn't take the vax, or hate people who didn't wear the mask, or hate people who didn't go along. And people would police each other, and they would get really mad and really angry and think that people who didn't take the vax should not receive medical care and should just like be left to die. Literally, people did that. People did that. That is being weaponized by the media to become a weapon against other people, like your neighbors and your friends and your coworkers and your uncles and your family members. Like, this is what's happening, people. Like, it's happened, and this is how it's done. It's not hard to see, but it's so pervasive that and it's done in a way you just absorb it. Like, it's just because it's the frame that everything is shown through, right? So anyway, so next sentence. But the vendetta, look at that word, he's waging against judges now is, according to experts and judges on both sides of the political spectrum, unheard of. All right, let me break that down. So it's a vendetta, is it? Okay, it's a vendetta. Well, that's a very strong word, right? What does that mean? Let's see here. A blood feud in which the family of a murdered person seeks vengeance on the murderer of the murderer's family. What is actually the Danish word? I'm curious about that. Used originally. Well, vendetta. Literally the same word. All right, cool. So, like, this is rather than another way. Well, let me finish the sentence. According to experts and judges on both sides, like, we always hear about experts. Oh, experts. You can always find an expert to say diametrically opposed things. Like, so you can just pull out the expert that you want that is saying the thing that you want to say. It's super easy. It's done all the time. So whenever you see the word expert, just ignore whatever comes next, because it's done to manipulate you. Unless they're saying, well, some experts say this and some experts say that, and they give you like a reasonable, like, balanced view. The fact is that this guy was voted in with a majority. There's a lot of people, millions of people, tens of millions of people who agree with this. And so just recognize these people are not morons or evil or idiots or anything like that. They're actually, like, especially, they're people who went against the mold and went against the entire programming to get them to do something else. So they might actually be a little bit smarter than the people who just do whatever the news tells them. Just consider that. So experts and judges on both sides of the political spectrum. So on both sides of the political spectrum is one of those things that when you don't know, it seems like, oh, it must be like, oh, there's all these people who disagree on different things, like Democrats and Republicans, and they're the reasonable people, but then there's all the crazies, the MAGA people that go do insurrection and storm the Capitol, and like, whoa, they're just hating the judges and they're against, like, that's the picture that they're painting. But what the MAGA people see is that both Democrats and Republicans they're known as the uni party, because there's this like fake sports rivalry, like they're like, oh, Democrats, Republicans, like they're two teams fighting and they're hating each other, No. Most of them are just bought by the same people. They're or bribed or blackmailed. Like the FBI, since its inception, has been about blackmail and bribing. Like look into the Dulles brothers, and look into I forget what that is. I talk about it in the book, but there's a name for it. COINTELPRO. They had a freaking name for this thing. All right, gotta get some air in here. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. So since the beginning, the FBI, and I'm sure lots of other, like, what was Epstein all about? Jeffrey Epstein. What was that all about? It was about having criminal blackmail on politicians and people of power, right? Who did he work for? I think the consensus is that he worked for Mossad. So, which is Israel's intelligence apparatus, right? And I mean, Didi is the same thing, just in the music industry. So a lot of people are compromised. And so the uni party is just like people that some happen to be Democrats and some happen to be Republicans, but they're all bought by the same people. And so at the end of the day, they might go on TV and have different views, but at the end of the day, they're going to vote the same, and they're going to be, where it counts, they're going to be supporting the same thing. So if you're saying on both sides of the political spectrum, either you have no clue how American politics actually works, in which case you shouldn't be writing articles like this, or B, you know that, but you want to give it this veneer that there's wide agreement, but then there are these crazy people who disagree, which means it's manipulative, in which case, like, that's what journalism is. Okay, so see how this works, and we're just freaking 2 sentences into the subhead, right? So yeah, the vendetta he's waging against judges now. So yeah, like, if the view is that the justice system is working just fine and this guy's crazy, like, that's what they're presenting, right? But the other view is that judges have become really partisan, and they're actually not even upholding the Constitution or the law. They're just like leveraging like the law to conduct lawfare and to, what they call legislating from the bench, or just, judicial activism. Like, they're just activist partisan actors, many of whom are also compromised and serving those same interests. Right? That's what's actually happening. And so, but since this is part of the apparatus that is trying to uphold the existing corrupt system, well, like, that's what you get. Everything suggests that it stems from both an ideological and personal hatred of the courts. Or, like, again, everything suggests. So they're not saying it is, but they're saying everything, literally everything suggests. So they're kind of saying it is, right? But so there's definitely some ideological, but what if the courts are actually corrupt? Like, what is if the courts are actually corrupt and dysfunctional? Would you want Trump to clean it up? Or do you want to have the courts corrupt and dysfunctional? Like, one of the things that are happening right now, like, all the lawsuits that were done against Trump during the election were all so weak and so fake. There's like the New York one, which is the one where he actually got the guilty verdict so they could get their mugshot. Like, look into it. But they changed the laws in New York so that these kinds of mistakes, of misclassification, could go back, that the time to, what is it called? Like the window to sue over it was extended so they could make this lawsuit, and then they reduced it back again. So they changed the law just so they could sue him for this. What he was actually judged for was the misclassification. Like, he wasn't judged, he wasn't found criminal for actual campaign finance violations, but for misclassifying things in his accounting. Like, it's such a weak case, and all the other cases are even weaker when you look at it. But people don't look at it. People read the news, and the news says he's guilty, right? So, like, and then if you look at what's happening now, is that you have a bunch of judges who are trying to stop Trump. Like, they're trying to keep criminals, illegal migrant criminals, gang members in the country, and prevent Trump from sending them the fuck out of the country. Like, why would they do that? And is it really true that any of, 590 something judges in that circuit court? I'm not too well versed in this, but is it true that any judge out of those hundreds and hundreds of judges have the power to stop the executive branch from doing the things that the executive branch is authorized to do and is elected to do? Because, like, that's 500 something shots at finding a corrupt activist judge that can stop him, and that's exactly what's happening. Like, do you see how, like, that, if that's the metric, if that's the standard, that you can just find any corrupt judge anywhere and they can issue a verdict that might not have any basis in law, but it, like, now the executive branch has to stop doing whatever they're doing. Who's now in charge? Who's now actually running the executive, right? They're supposed to be co-equal branches. The judicial branch doesn't have the power. They have the power to issue a judgment, but they actually don't have any power besides that. That's up to the executive. So anyway, let's keep going. Here's Trump looking really smug and like, yeah, haha, look at me. I got these guys. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm saying, what I'm seeing in that image. Trump is in full swing in his fight against the judiciary. Everything indicates that there's also personal reasons behind Trump's rage. Do you see, like, every single sentence is designed to make you think that this guy is like just a raging lunatic who's just doing shit for his own reasons because of him, and everything's about him. Like, he's being painted as this crazy narcissist. There's no balance to this. There's no actual trying to understand. If you read this, you are not informed. You are uninformed. You're misinformed, right? If this is your source of news, you have no fucking clue what's going on. Literally nothing. They say old love never rusts. The same probably applies, at least to some extent, to hatred. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever. Old hatred. Like, no. Like, look. The DOJ, the judiciary system, has gone after Trump. But where's the guy who tried to murder Trump? Like, what happened there? Like, he's dead, obviously, but like, what happened? Was he just like a lone person? But there's too many coincidences here. Like the Secret Service, the slanted roof, like I was just like, what? Like, what's going on? Why was his body cremated so quickly? Like, do you see how, like, skewed and biased shit is? It's like, oh yeah, judges, and it's all like, it's this fantasy land where everything is run by good people, honest people, when the reality is none of that is happening. Yes, there are good and honest people in there, but usually the ones that are in charge are not them. It is well known that Donald Trump has had an almost devilish horn in the side of the U.S. justice system for a number of years. No, the U.S. justice system has had a devilish horn in the side for Trump ever since he started fucking running, right? It's been going after him. They used the law to try to prevent him from running. They instigated January 6th and try to, like, impeach him for that. And they've been going after him with all these bullshit freaking lawsuits, trying to get after him. That's proof to me and others, and Trump and others who are watching. I'm not going to put mind read Trump, but I would say that's proof, plenty proof, that the justice system is broken, terribly broken. And the justice system has been used. Like, it's not like, what is the justice system, right? But there are people there in power who's definitely has a horn in the side of Trump. Which is one of the reasons that I, despite all Trump's flaws, am a fan, because if the deep state and the apparatus, the DOJ, the media, the FBI, like all of those institutions are so against this guy, all these institutions that we know are corrupt, right? There's like, I'm going to show you a couple of books here. 3 Felonies a Day. This is a book that explains how there's so many felony crimes on the book. Like, I think he says like 300,000, that everybody literally commits 3 felonies a day, which is perfect for a situation where you want to do the, like, show me the man, I'll find you the crime, right? So how the feds target the innocent, like, happens all the time. And then I think it's the other one is Crime Factory. Is it the crime, FBI Crime Factory book? There's a book about how the Terror Factory here, inside the FBI's manufactured war and terrorism. Like, they're basically, FBI has manufactured all of these different plots so that they could then go shut them down. So they're creating terror plots and other crimes so that they can go after people. But then the things that they don't want to go after, like who tried to kill Trump. One, there's at least 2, I think there's 3 attempts at his life. Like, who are those? They're just buried. We don't know. Like, who murdered JFK? It's like been 60 something years, right? 62 years. And we still have the answer. And nobody's been held to account for it. And same with Richard Nixon, like the people who wrongly ousted him, who's been held accountable, have we been told, has anyone apologized to his family or anything? Fuck no. So back to the article. But the struggle he has embarked on since his second inauguration as president of the United States appears to surpass anything any other president has accomplished. That's awesome. I think that's worth celebrating. If the justice system is really corrupt, it's great that he's surpassed whatever anyone else has accomplished, both in terms of the number of presidential decrees and the way he deals with the judiciary. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it, Stephen Levitsky, a Harvard political scientist and co-author of books on autocracy, recently told the New York Times. So there are so many red flags here. So again, you can easily find any expert any fucking where to say any fucking thing, right? Super easy. Harvard, like the whole university complex in the US is so garbage, so corrupt. Like, Harvard used to be a cool thing, and now it's just the whole DEI and like political correctness and what is the thing? The affirmative action, all this stuff. Like, these places are just jokes. They're complete jokes. So of course there's a guy there who's written up books, co-authored books on autocracy. Oh my God. So like they're sneaking that word autocracy in there, and he's like, oh, he's probably an autocrat, because you've been told he's an autocrat. And also the New York Times is like full of fucking lies. And you'll see that the Danish media loves to quote the New York Times. It has this aura of like authority to it, but it's utter garbage. Like, when you know, it's terrible. Levitsky is used to comparing countries like Hungary, Poland, and Turkey, where the rule of law is being trampled on to varying degrees. Again, it's like, okay. Oh, you're talking about how, was there something about Poland like banning the major political opponent? Like, I know they did that in Romania recently. They just did that in France with Marine Le Pen. Is that what you're talking about? Is that what you're talking? No, I don't see those like countries there. Interesting. And in many ways, this is worse. The first 2 months have been much more aggressively authoritarian than almost any other comparable case I know of. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Right? Authoritarian, like, it's just a word that you throw out, but it's not being defined, and they're not arguing for what specifically Trump has done that would be quote unquote authoritarian. Like, Trump was democratically elected, with even winning the popular vote, which nobody thought was going to happen. And then he's done executive orders on all the things that he promised to do and was elected to do. Like, what? That seems very democratic to me. But I don't know what you're talking about that would be authoritarian. But again, we're being programmed to think, oh, he's an autocrat, like he's an authoritarian, right? Because if you look at Putin and Orban, it has taken them many years to gain such great control over the judiciary in their country. Okay, like, are you saying that Trump has great control over the judiciary, given that how many judges are trying to block his way. Like, I don't understand. You can't have it both ways. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, does he have control over the judiciary? What does this mean? The eagerness with which these people are displaying increasingly overt authoritarian behavior is unlike almost anything I've seen. Erdogan, Chavez, Orban, they hit it. And like, again, can you define this behavior, and can you give us specific examples of actions that Trump have taken that you think match those criteria? I'd like to see that. I'd really like to see that. But of course, they don't. Yeah. So I'm not going to continue. The next one is so great. Everything indicates that Trump's fight against the courts is far from being solely legal, and that is to a greater extent both ideological and personal. So now they start just mind reading and speculating, right? Which is all they do, because they can't. If things are not based in specific facts, note how few facts there are here. Note how few facts there are. Are there any facts? So far, there's zero facts. There's zero facts. We haven't been given a specific action that he's taken, or even a definition of autocracy, authoritarian, whatever. Zero facts. It's completely fact-free, right? So far. And this is the secret to reading articles. You gotta skim, you gotta ignore all of the narrative, all of this BS, and just get to the fact. Get to the actual fact. Yeah? Which usually is buried way down at the bottom. There's like a tiny factoid that the whole thing was based off of. And then you can look at that and be like, well, that's, make it an exercise for yourself to see how many ways you can interpret that. And if you were a Trump lover, how might you interpret it? Just open your mind to that, right? A friend of my parents was a plastic surgeon, and he told me years ago that how his teacher, that he was the best in the country, amazing plastic surgeon. And he said the reason he was so great was that his teacher always said, you need to find at least 17 different ways to solve any problem. So you're looking at, he did like hands and wrists and stuff. He's looking at like how would you fix his hand? And then he's like, here's what I do. And she's like, okay, what's another way you could do? And what's another way? And she would insist that he come up with 17 different ways to do this, which made him very, very creative. And then once that habit is ingrained, you have that muscle of being able to think outside the box and quickly think through a lot of different scenarios. So I want you to apply that to reading the articles and find the factoids, and then look at what are 17 other ways that I can interpret this. And just know that you're being programmed you're being weaponized. You're being programmed to become a weapon in a war that's fought with information. One of the things I say in my book is we are already in World War III. It's just, it's not fought with bullets. Although drones definitely going to be a thing at some point, but it's mainly at this point being fought with information. And so the information is the thing that's programming you so that you can be the weapon that's leveraged against other citizens. This is how we're being played. This is what's happening, people. All right, so now we get to Napoleon. So they're so great. I can't believe that they're like serious about this shit. Like, it's so insane. It's not because Donald Trump has ever hidden that he has his own interpretation of the American Constitution, which, as is well known, divides power between a legislative and executive and a judicial branch. Okay, like what do you actually mean? Because I've not seen. Maybe he hasn't hidden it, but I've never come across that. Like, what I see is that there are people who actually interpret the Constitution to mean what it means, and like, what was it, Justice Scalia, or no, it's Clarence Thomas. There's a documentary about Clarence Thomas, which is awesome. You should watch that. But like, he will have a dictionary from the time each piece of the Constitution was written, so they can look at what that word meant at that time, because words change meaning over time. And if you want to interpret what they meant by the Constitution, you have to go back to the way language was used back then. That, to me, is how we should interpret the American Constitution. But there are a lot of people on the bench right now in the Supreme Court that don't believe that. They believe, well, we can just kind of what they call legislating from the branch. I disagree with that strongly. So I don't know what the fuck his own interpretation is that he says, but whatever, they're postulating shit, right? I have the right to do whatever I want as president, he said in 2019. All right, let's see what the fuck he said, what that is. So this is like a Washington Post, which is just a garbage newspaper as well. And I can't get to it because there's a paywall and I don't have time to get into that. Referring to Article 2 of the Constitution, what is Article 2? What does say? What does that actually say? Article 2. Let's go here, Constitution Center. What is that? Actually, let's go to the official. Article 2. Okay, it's a little long here. The executive powers can be vested in the President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Da, 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 da. Congress may be choosing of electors. Da, da, Section 2. The President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing. Da, 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 da. He shall have the power. Da, 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 da. He can give the State of the Union. Shall be impeachment, conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Yeah. All right. We're not gonna get into that, but like I don't know what that quote was or what the context was or whatever, but it sounds like, oh my God, he's like a tyrannical totalitarian or whatever the fuck it is that they want you to think that he is, right? Like, of course he doesn't mean that he has the right to do whatever he wants. Like, if he wants to like drop a nuke on New York, I get maybe he does have the right to do that. But I'm like, if he wants to like take all the gold in Fort Knox, assuming it still is some, and like wire it to like put it in his own vault, or wire all the money of the U.S. Treasury to his own bank account, I'm pretty sure he would agree that he can't do that, right? So it's not like he means literally that he has the right to do whatever he wants as president, but that's how it's presented. I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I'm not inside Trump's mind. But I would assume that he doesn't think that. But what he means to say is that, and I have no idea what the context was again, that he has the right to do things that other people are like, oh my God, you can't do that. Right. I don't know what the context was. And they're not telling us, right? They're not telling us that's important. He is not influenced by the fact that legal scholars have a different opinion. Again, legal scholars, what the fuck does that mean? And you can find a legal scholar that has a different opinion on fucking everything, right? There are literally Supreme Court justices who disagree vehemently on the law or how to interpret the fucking Constitution. It's not that long. And their entire job is to interpret the Constitution. They can't fucking agree on it. They can't even fucking agree on a framework through which to interpret it. Some people are like, we got to go back to the meaning of the words at the time and figure out what people meant when they did it. And other people are like, no, we don't have to do that. We can just like make up what we think it means today, and then just kind of find a way to argue for what we want the outcome to be. That's an actual difference in like the view of Supreme Court justices. If they disagree this much, you can find legal scholars to say fucking anything. So this has zero value other than to weaponize you. Like, do you see how this game is played? It's so fucking sinister. It's so fucking insane. Because he who saves his country breaks no laws, the president wrote on Truth Social in January. Yeah, so the guy is a troll, right? The guy is the world's biggest troll, and he loves to troll people and make them, like, you know, see their reaction. He loves that. I don't know, it works for him in some ways, and then it works against him in other ways. Like, Trump being Trump. But I don't know. There's lots of ways that you can interpret this, but what I'm seeing is like, dude, like we're sending fucking like gang members that came here illegally to outside the country to be in jail. Like how is that fucking breaking the law? Like if I'm doing things that are actually right for the country, like we're not like, obviously it has to be within the powers of the government. It has to follow the law, but like you guys are crazy to say that I'm breaking a law by doing that. Like the thing that I think to get with Trump is that he's very intuitive. He's very instinctual. Like he's not an intellectual, which the people like who write this, someone who write, like the journalist behind this. Who is this person actually? Let's find out. Gunnar Willum. What has he accomplished? He's a Middle East correspondent. That's phenomenal. Good job, Gunnar. What? So Gunnar, what has he accomplished in his life? Let's actually look that up. Like, what has he accomplished in his life? What the fuck does he know about life? What was it? Gunnar Willum. profile for Gunnar Willem. Journalist, self-employed. All right, cool. Something in Arabic. He lives in Dubai. Okay. Seems like it's self-employed. He writes for different. Now here. What else do we know about this guy? I don't know. Is he on X? Site x.com. Gunnar Willem. Yeah, maybe he's there. I don't know if that's the guy. Anyway, never mind. So the point is, like, what has he accomplished in life, and what makes him like the expert on all this stuff, right? He's obviously not. He's a journalist. It might, like, Trump acts very instinctual, and it's clearly working for him. Like, he became the president twice, and I would argue that he voted the election 3 times. That's a pretty good running against the media, running against the entire apparatus, and he managed to win. It's pretty impressive. So I think it's fair to say that he's figured some things out in life, you know? And so it might be worth just acknowledging that and looking at it and being like, all right, maybe there's something for me to learn here. But no, of course, we're not going to do that. We're just going to be like, oh, he's an idiot. Anyway, so the quote is attributed to French military leader and self-proclaimed Emperor Napoleon. Implied, the ends justify the means when the goal is to make America great again. Okay. I mean, maybe that's the implication, but that's your interpretation for sure. Like, again, what was the context that he said that in? Like, what was happening at that time that made him say that? Because it's obviously a commentary on something that's happening in that moment. I don't remember what the context was. He says in January. I don't freaking know. But now we're going to be using that to say, oh, Trump is like Napoleon. Like, look at the association, right? We're associating him with Napoleon now. Oh, he's like Napoleon. I don't remember what the fuck Napoleon did, but I think seem to remember he was a bad guy. I don't know. Like, Trump is probably bad. Emperor Napoleon, self-proclaimed, like military, like, oh, Trump, evil, right? He's going to do bad shit. Again, all the time. In Trump's interpretation of the American Constitution, power in the Republic is concentrated in the Oval Office with him. The fuck no. Like, he has to get things through Congress. He knows that. Of course, there's the Supreme Court that issues, like, that issues judgment. Like, that he knows that. Like, you're just making shit up and attributing it to him, right? From there, he has issued a flurry of executive orders. Again, a flurry of executive orders. If he continues at the pace he's begun, Trump will end up breaking all records with a vengeance. It's like, okay. Right now, Jimmy Carter is the president who over the past half century has issued the most executive orders annually, on average 80. But during his first 2.5 months in the White House, Trump has already issued 111 of them. In this way, he has, among other things, closed down the United States Agency for International Development, ordered the liquidation of Department of Education, and given Elon Musk Special Department for Efficiency free reign to shave off the public sector. All right, so a couple of things here. None of this, but in other places I've seen it, like, this being stated as, like, he shut down international aid. No, that's not actually what that is. The United States Agency for International Development is a CIA cutout. It's like it's the visible arm of the CIA. The CIA is more the covert, and this is more the overt. And the USAID is a CIA organization that is doing the dirty job business of the CIA. It's not a good organization. They're doing lots of harm all over the world. You've not heard a single country who's like, oh yeah, we missed the money and influence that we got from the USAID. That's not a thing. There's no country that's been the recipient of this stuff that has been like, oh, we really missed that. We would like that back. Not a thing. Liquidation of the Department of Education. Yes, he did that. It's great. I mean, it's not like he didn't do that. He did do these things. This one, giving them free reign to shave off the public sector, I think that's a really strong way to put it. As I understand it, what they're doing is they're going in and they're analyzing, right? They're looking, there's all these broken, old, decrepit IT systems, and they are going in and looking at the data, organizing the data in a way where you can actually make intelligent queries of it to find out what the fuck is going on. And then they make recommendations to the leader of each department for what they about what they think they should do, or at least just giving them data, giving them insight into what is actually happening so they can make good decisions. But they're the ones that are making the decisions. They're just there to support. They're there to find the data and make recommendations and find things that look bad, that look fraudulent, that look wasteful. All right, so I'm going to spare you from the rest of this thing. Many experts strongly disagree, right? Never seen anything like it. Again, like, look, it's like dripping in this. It's dripping in this shite. Oh my God, people. Like, wake the fuck up and see. Look at this guy. He's got to be evil. Who is this? Federal Judge James Bowes. Yeah. Well, he's definitely not a good guy. So anyway, so it keeps going here. He's smiling. He looks like a good guy. Escalating attacks. It's a long fucking article. Look at how long this bullshit is. Yeah. Illegal story. I would have every right to go after him. He doesn't have it yet, but everything indicates he will go as far as he can to achieve the goal. I don't know what this. Anyway, so shitty. So shitty. All right, my friends, that's it for today's newspaper reading. Let's switch over to my book, the best book in the world when it comes to all of this stuff. So we are on chapter 3. It's titled My Position. So this is where I lay out where I actually stand in all of this, so that you know, so you go into it with an open eye. And who knows, we might do one or two chapters. We'll see. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Maybe I do something like where so I can find. I don't know. No, it's fine. We'll just start here. My position. Let me state my political position clearly, so there's no confusion. Let me state my political position clearly, so there's no confusion or beating around the bush. I'm not Democrat, not Republican, not liberal, not conservative, not progressive, not libertarian. I'm for integrity and forgiveness. Integrity is make or break, and we've gotten away from it. Redemption is the path back to integrity after a breach. I'm against physical violence, theft, and adults having sex with children. The last one is important because it's a major vector for blackmail. Jeffrey Epstein, right? We all know about Jeffrey Epstein, and P. Diddy, that. This is what it's all about. Get you to do something that's so heinous. Maybe you're on drugs, whatever. We got it on tape, and now we got you. That's it. That's how it works. Yeah. And if you're not aware of this level of what's happening, you're being weaponized. You're just what do they call it? A useful idiot, right? Anyway, back to the script. I'm for defining clear values and desired outcomes, an honest assessment of where we are, and a sincere collaboration to figure out the best ways to get there. Most political conversation is about obfuscation and deceit, not clarity and honesty. One of my favorite examples of that, by the way, is what is it? My body, my choice. Like about abortion, like my body, my choice, my body. I can choose whether I have an abortion or not. That is so. It's pure obfuscation and deceit, right? It's so dishonest because the only reason we're discussing this is that there are two bodies. There's yours and the baby's. And so maybe we don't think of the baby as a baby, as a body, until the body's a certain age. Maybe some people are saying, well, it's a human at the moment of conception. Some people say, well, no, it only happens after a month or 3 months or 6 months, or only when the baby is viable to live outside the womb, or only when the baby's actually born. I don't think anyone is arguing that it happens when the baby's a year after it's born, or 10 years after it's born, or 50 years after it's born. But can we all agree at some point it goes from being tissue to being alive? And we don't let people murder people. People murder people all the time, but we don't allow that. They still do it. And so if you're just saying my body, my choice, you're ignoring the exact thing that makes it an issue. That there are two bodies. And so therefore that kind of sloganeering is purely obfuscation and deceit. Right? That's the only point of saying that, is to obfuscate the matter and not have an honest conversation. So look out for that. Back to the manuscript. I'm for a small and efficient government. Government is by definition a monopoly based on violence. And I'm against violence, so I want to minimize it. Maybe I should double click on this. So the government has a monopoly on violence, but it also has a monopoly, like meaning the government is the only entity that's allowed to use violence or threats of violence to achieve their ends. Like, I'm not allowed to go say, well, if you don't pay me, $1,000, I'm going to break your knee. I'm not allowed to do that. People might do that anyway. We got the mafia, we got criminals, we got organized crime, all that stuff. But they're not allowed to. The government is allowed to do that. They are allowed to say, well, if you don't do what I say, if you don't pay your taxes or pay this fine, we're going to come find you, take you out of your house, take you away from your family, and put you in a cage called a prison, called a jail cell. We're going to do that. That's the threat of violence. They're the only ones who are allowed to do that. And everything that the government does is backed up by that threat of violence. Every single thing that the government does is backed up by that threat of violence in the end. And now they have a monopoly on a bunch of things like printing money or collecting tax or like violence or like whatever it is. Like all the monopolies that the government has are all based ultimately on violence or the threat of violence. That's how it works. And since I'm against violence, I want to minimize that. I haven't found a better way to do it, but we got to do as little of it as absolutely necessary. That's my belief. That's my view. Back to the manuscript. I believe normal people can and must take care of themselves. We don't need the government to be involved in normal people's lives. We got this. Again, sidebar here, like, borders and roads and all that kind of stuff, like that's obviously going to involve like be the government to some extent being involved in my life, right? Maybe firefighting, we want to have that. Maybe policing, like we probably want to have policing. But like helping me buy groceries or pay rent or like, just like doctors, all education, all that stuff in my mind is not something that the government needs to be involved in. And since it doesn't need to be involved in, and I want to minimize the government because it's based in violence, I think the government should not be involved in those things. That's my view. I'm for free speech. Free speech is the only way we can free speech is the only way we can progress as a society. They tried to silence Galileo, and it wasn't the best idea. What do I want for our countries and the people living in them? I want to create a world where people are happy, healthy, prosperous, and safe. I want a thriving economy and a thriving planet. I want secure. Let me do that over. What's up, Yasmin? Someone's coming. I think someone's coming to fix our heater. I think she'll calm down in a sec. I want secure elections, secure borders, and an honest media that holds everyone to account. This is my position. End of story. I have lots of ideas about how to get there. Those are all subject to revision in the face of new information. How to read this book. Handyman coming in. Did you guys hear that in the background, or is it just me because I'm wearing the headphones here? It's like I'm just recording this at home, right? So shit's happening. All right, back. How to read this book. As you read this, resist the temptation to hear things I'm not saying. Sidebar, this happens all the time, right? Like, as I said at the beginning, I lost coaching clients because they heard me say things that I didn't say. But because it fits a worldview, and now it became like, it's like, there's these people and there's these people. And because you said this thing, now you belong to those people. And therefore you must also believe all the same things. And therefore you're a bad person. Like that happens all the freaking time. Back to the manuscript. As much as possible, try to listen to my observations and arguments and evaluate them on their merit. I'm not asking you to believe a word I say. I'm asking you to reflect on the argument and make up your own mind. We've been trained to trust authorities like the media, experts, and government officials, and I'm here to invite you to reclaim your power. You're better than you give yourself credit for. I'm presenting a perspective that's bigger and broader and I'm presenting a perspective that's bigger and broader and has more far-reaching implications than anything I've seen before. If I didn't feel that I could add an important perspective, I wouldn't bother. Even if you end up dismissing everything I say as tinfoil hat stuff, know that a massive chunk of the country does believe what I say here. It's worth it just to understand where they're coming from. Low rung. As we've seen, we're living through a clash of worldviews. It's not left versus right, it's blue pill versus red pill. Trust in institutions and the old left-right game versus corrupt institutions. But there's something else going on. We can no longer have calm, rational conversations about politics. Let me explain. There's two ways to talk politics: high rung and low rung. In high rung politics, we have rational and honest conversations about values, desired outcomes, and how to best achieve them. In low rung politics, we can't. Our beliefs are part of our identity, which is why we feel attacked by and villainize people who disagree with us, and why we resort to name calling, labeling, bad faith arguments, sloganeering, and censorship. We've gotten significantly more low rung in the past couple of decades, in part because of the internet and social media, but mostly because the dark forces that control our culture want it that way. When people are busy fighting each other, they don't notice the man behind the curtain. So in this book, you're going to hear me talk about the man behind the curtain, the dark forces, the blob, all that stuff. And it's very easy to dismiss that as like, oh yeah, conspiracy theory and like blah, blah, blah. But like, look at the JFK files. Like, look at all the things that we all the different situations like COVID. Like, this stuff always comes out. Like, they made COVID in a lab. Like, Fauci and others tried to hide that for us, and they lied it, and they hired the FOIA lady who could teach them how to avoid FOIA requests, like Freedom of Information Act requests, and all. Like, we know this now. It's established fact. It's just that the media doesn't write about it. It doesn't talk about it. So the mainstream doesn't talk about it. So most people just ignore it, because if it's not in the mainstream media, like, it's probably just some weird conspiracy theory. No, it's not. It's actually the reality. But you have to seek it out yourself. All right, back to the manuscript. I believe the blob intentionally makes us sick, stupid, depressed, angry, traumatized, and addicted, so it's easy to steal from us, enslave us, and pit us against each other. It's not that hard to do, and they've been practicing the science and art of this for decades, and we fall for it hard. However, we have the option to choose another way. A future so bright you'll have to wear sunglasses. I've been wanting to use this line in a book for so long. If we did wake up, grow up, and decide to change things, what's possible? If we heal and we come together, what kind of world could we create? I believe we have within our reach the opportunity to usher in a new golden age in our lifetimes. That's what I mean when I say in my subtitle that we can create the world we want to live in. I'm talking about a time of health, happiness, prosperity, and safety. A thriving economy and a thriving planet. I believe it's a lot simpler and a lot more attainable than most people think. Human beings are incredibly creative, resilient, and powerful. In fact, we are the God force itself. That's who we are. We just misidentify with like a smaller, limited self. Very important. Back to the script. As David Deutsch argues in The Beginning of Infinity, if there's not specifically a law of nature that prohibits something, we'll eventually figure out how to make it happen. Sidebar, everybody needs to read that book. It's incredible. David Deutsch, The Beginning of Infinity. My good friend Branimir recommended that to me like 15 years ago or something, and it just completely changed how I look at the world. So important. Back. The vast majority of the almost 8 billion people on the planet simply want to live a normal life with the people around them and do good work that matters to them and to others. They want to be happy, healthy, prosperous, and safe, and they want the same for others. We really are a remarkably generous and loving species, but you wouldn't know it looking at world history. I remember hearing about a different kind of history book a while back, one that told about the lives of ordinary people. What was their day-to-day like during this era? Which is so different from how most of history is told. Most of history is about who was the king or president or prime minister and which war was waged by whom against whom over what. I call it nation sports. It's so easy to get lost in the big storylines and forget the lives of the people on the ground. In December 1914, in the height of World War I, in this one location, British and German troops came out of their trenches to celebrate Christmas together. It began with singing carols across no man's land on Christmas Eve, and soon after they were exchanging greetings, food, and small gifts like cigarettes and chocolate. They even played impromptu soccer games with each other. This is what most humans are really like. Love, generosity, playfulness. But our leaders have figured out how to make us fight with each other for their own gain at our expense. We don't have to fall for it. Despite all this censorship, the internet, social media, and podcasts have woken people up faster than ever. We can choose a different future than the trajectory we're currently on. What's funny is we all see it. But while someone on the left sees Trump as that person who is hypnotizing his people, those on the right see the media and the Democrat machine as the ones hypnotizing people. Which version is true? It's hard to know by design. Maybe they're both true. Let's all agree that no matter who does it, it's not what we want. The question to ask. Actually, the questions to ask. As you read this book, consider this. If we really are, as I argue, being intentionally kept sick, ignorant, and infighting by a man behind the curtain, do you agree that the changes... No. That. Okay. If we really are, as I argue, being intentionally kept sick, ignorant, and infighting by a man behind the curtain, do you agree that that changes the political conversation entirely? Does it piss you off? Does it bother you that they destroyed the health of you and your loved ones, stole your money, murdered millions of people, and lied straight to your face about it all? Does it make you want to fight for a better future for yourself, your kids, and your grandkids? I hope it does. In a peaceful, nonviolent way. I'm against violence. If so, this book will show you how. LFG. And for those who don't know, that means let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Should we do one more? Yeah, it's super short. All right, next chapter. What is politics? Like I said, I like to start at the ground level with first principles. What is politics about? To me, politics is the art and science of negotiating a shared understanding of reality, shared values, and desired outcomes, and crafting strategies to achieve those desired outcomes as efficiently as possible while adhering to our agreed upon values. That's a big task, but that's what is required. We call the strategies policies, but they're also known as laws, regulations, institutions, and more. Entrepreneurship, to me, is the art and science of effecting change with limited resources. The job of government is similar, but on a societal scale and with a crucial difference. With private business, we can have lots of them, and people can choose who they want to buy from, except when there's a monopoly, which is why we have antitrust laws. A government is a monopoly in its geographic area, most critically a monopoly on violence. The government is the only entity in its geographic jurisdiction that's allowed to use violence to achieve its objectives. Everything the government demands of you, like paying your taxes, having a valid driver license when driving, and not breaking the law, is backed by a threat of violence. If you don't do what we demand, we will show up at your door with guns and put you in jail until we decide that you've been punished enough. Everything the government does is backed by the threat of violence. Everything. And the government is the only entity that's allowed to do this. People outside the government who use violence to achieve their goals are called criminals. So with government, because it's a monopoly, we better get it right. We have to compromise. We have to do our very best together. It'll never be perfect. Our best bet is to keep approximating. And we can only do that by working together. All right, my friends, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. I appreciate you all. I hope this helps educate a little bit. Like I've spent so much time studying all of this, and again, like applying a lens of spirituality to this that I haven't seen anywhere else. Like entrepreneurship, spirituality, first principles. So I hope that there's something that you get out of this that makes you think about things a little bit differently. And I hope to be able to restore relations between America and Europe, and help all of us like usher in a new golden age. And I know like now Trump has started using that term. I first heard it from Scott Adams, he started talking about like that a golden age is actually possible. And I started thinking more about that. That was like 3-4 years ago. Maybe, no, I think is even longer ago, actually 5-6 years ago. So I've been thinking about that more and more. And it's like, literally we have the power in our minds to create any world we want. And then we created this shit. This is like mess. And the world is beautiful and I love life. But come on, there's some room for improvement here. So, how do we create something that's actually beautiful? But it starts with questioning what you think is true about the reality as it is. Right? We got to start by being like, oh, I don't know that everything is the way that I thought it was. What's actually true here? What's the reality actually really like? It's important to figure out. All right, my friends, that's it for today. I'll catch you guys maybe tomorrow. I've got a busy day tomorrow, maybe not there, but then some other time. Appreciate you. Thank you.